Evening and hello, a warm welcome to you on Unfiltered. My name is Riri Tlhabi. Tonight on the program, we reflect on the relationship between political parties and the state. During apartheid, there was a deliberate convergence of interests between the party, the state, the church, the judiciary, the media, academia, business, and other sectors of society. Now, with the dawn of democracy, our expectations, at least mine, were very, very high. The party had no business flooding the civil service and state institutions with loyal cadres who would fulfill the demands and needs of the party at the expense of the nation. And I think this is the most important part, at the expense of the nation. So this week we learned from the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture that the ANC in particular had a preference for and pushed for the appointment of Siyabonga Gama as CEO of Transnet. Now, examples of the blurring of lines between the state and the party are too endless to mention. So tonight on Unfiltered, we discuss the very thin line between the state, the party, and factions. Take a look at this.
I've decided to remove Mr. Nhlanhla Nene and appoint Mr. David van Rooyen as the new Minister of Finance.
If you are a political leader, you appoint dwarfs, you are actually pulling yourself down.
If any cabinet minister or the president tried to instruct me on who should be appointed, they would be usurping my executive authority.
We come from the dark past. That dark past, among others, has to do with the state capture. And we will come at the appropriate time and explain certain issues as the African National Congress. But we're not going to take a collective responsibility about individuals who did things, not on behalf of the ANC, but in their own behalf.
Democratic Alliance and Mayor Patricia de Lille have come to a mutual agreement that in fact resolves the question of the leadership of the DA government in the city of Cape Town.
The DA does not believe in. They don't believe that to test allegations you must follow due process. They want to be the judge, the jury, and they want to also find you guilty at the same time. The deputy mayor is also, Ian Nielsen, is also implicated in this report. Nothing has been done about him. The DA must also separate party and state.
I think it is important to mention that South Africa has a new political party. Patricia just announced a couple of hours ago that she would contest the 2019 elections, as if South Africa doesn't already have enough political parties, but that's a conversation for another day. So joining me tonight, our policy and political analyst, Dr. Soma Doda Figeni. We have Prince Mashele, who is an author and political analyst, and Dr. Stembile Mbete, who is an analyst and also a lecturer at the University of Pretoria. Welcome to the show. Okay, party and state, come on. Are we being impossible here? Are we expecting too much? Is it not inevitable that the party in government will deploy its trusted and loyal officials, and at some point there will be a blurring of lines? Is that a problem?
That is not a problem. Universally, you do have parties that take over, trying to deploy some of their trusted members. But the problem is amplified when you start putting people who are not capable, and when you have not defined the national interest. And it becomes even worse, as we saw in the case of the ANC, that when power is personalized and institutions are weakened because of a neo-patrimonial or patronage network in a factionalized environment, it makes things worse, because even the most capable cadres within the same party, should they fall on the wrong faction, their life is over. And it doesn't stop there. You have no succession planning, as you heard Barbara Hogan talking about, not even having an opportunity to hand over.
Yes.
And the cost of that is that you begin to diminish institutional and leadership capacity.
Indeed, institutional memory is lost, and each person who comes in comes with a new program and not continuing where the other one left off, even if it's to the benefit of the country.
Yes, right? But there is also a balance here. The level of deployments and the professionalization, such that you deploy people in certain positions, but you allow natural processes of getting other professionals coming in, so that you do not have everybody having a party tag as a way of social mobility.
So, Prince, I'm just thinking about a scenario here. It's not far-fetched, it's not inconceivable, it has happened. Dr. Somadoda Figeni talked about cadre deployment not being a problem, but only problematic when you deploy unsuitable people. So what happens? What happens if you are the party loyalist who can get members to the party, who can sing and shout the loudest and amplify your voice in support of your party's values, credentials, and campaigns. But from a governance point of view, you are weak. From an ethical point of view, you are weak. What should the party do in that instance?
The starting point is not the competence of deployees. The starting point is about how governance institutions are organized and professionalized in a democracy. That's the starting point. So how does it work? You can look at democracy all over the world. There is an expectation that when a party is given a mandate by the electorate, the party will direct the state's agenda. Okay. And that is normally contained in the manifesto. So the party will tell you, this is what we're going to do. So they win. When they win, there is a particular level of government that belongs to the party. There's no debate about it. So the party has a right to choose amongst its members who's going to be minister of what and the president and all of that.
So that's cadre deployment in our lexicon, and that's okay, you say?
It's perfectly okay, because these are the people who said, if you vote for us, these are the faces that will run your government. But it has to stop at a particular level. So in the administration of the state, that is the level below the director general, chief director and below. The party must not touch that level. That level is for people who have been to university, who have specialized qualifications. That's why there's an advert in the newspaper to say, we are looking for the deputy director in the Department of...
That's in an ideal world,
that's
Prince. How do you implement that?
Work.
It's impossible.
No, it's not impossible. We have to tell the truth and know how it works, so that when the party violates it, we can tell that now they are violating it. So in South Africa now, the reason why we have this debate, it is precisely because the ANC has violated exactly how it's supposed to work.
Dr. Mbete, that sounds so sweet. Dr. Mbete.
Thank you.
Okay, so talk to me about what you see as the problem when it comes to the state-party relations. Is there a way of doing it in such a way that we avoid some of what we saw in our insert?
So fundamentally, let's remember that South Africa has effectively a parliamentary system. Yes, we have a constitutional democracy that's governed by the Constitution of the Republic with a constitutional court. And yes, we call the head of state and government our president. But in all other respects, in terms of how the president is elected through a majority of the National Assembly. And in terms of how the president is meant to account, the president accounts to Parliament, as we saw last week through the president's questions. And so in that kind of system, that means that it's a different system to, let's say, what the United States has, where you elect a president directly and that president can bring in their own senior civil service, not just the politicians, but they can bring in a whole lot of new people to run the state according to their ideological or political view. South Africa operates differently, similar to the United Kingdom or to Germany or Canada. And one of the things about that kind of system then is that it relies heavily on a professional civil service in order to buffer the administration, the everyday work of the state, from the political winds. So that the idea is that no matter who is in charge, no matter who is setting the strategic direction of the state, who is setting the political or the ideological direction of the state, the everyday stuff of the trains running, the water being clean, the electricity, the lights coming on.
Has just issued a communique just a couple of minutes ago before we went on air that there's some load shedding that is scheduled.
Exactly. And so all of that is supposed to be insulated from and protected.
Do you think it's
from,
possible?
And it is possible. And in actual fact, South Africa, from the period from about 1996 to about 2009-10, you actually had a lot of continuity in many state institutions and a great deal of continuity within government departments at the levels that Prince was speaking about exactly, at that level below the Directors General.
So it was a profession.
It was a profession, and people were trained in it, and they came in, and there was a real effort to try to develop and
So what went wrong?
What
went wrong?
Here is the thing. This is what, by the way, I agree with her theory. It's perfect. Her theory and mine are the same, because we understand this thing from the same perspective. But here is the thing. Even in that period, by the way, we glorify it.
Wasn't perfect, yeah.
You know why we glorify it?
Tell me.
Because Mandela was president. Mandela had moral weight. So we didn't actually look. If you were to look at who under Mandela, under Thabo Mbeki, who were appointed to head parastatals, you will find that almost all of them, your Brian Mulifes of this world, by the way, were appointed under Mbeki and Mandela. These people had political connections, but because there was an excitement linked to the fact that the ANC had moral integrity at the time, we actually didn't see that as a problem.
But I have no problem with political connections. I actually don't. So if you bring me a Brian Molefe, but he's a technocrat and he knows what goes on in this particular sector, but he's politically connected, is that particularly problematic?
It is not problematic if the processes which would clarify that this person is competent, the person goes through those and can demonstrate.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. Throughout the world, you find that. What seemed to have happened here is probably more than what Prince is saying. The first wave of cadres were senior, were seasoned, were prepared.
Articulate and knowledgeable.
As a result, even those who were under Mandela or Mbeki, when they were removed, they found spaces in the United Nations everywhere in the companies because they had some competence.
Yes.
There came a time when ANC started fragmenting and the literal search for factional leaders, looking for the people who were loyal. That was the first test than the competence.
And you have to ask, loyal to whom? Because is it loyalty to the leader or faction? Just hold that thought. I know you're dying to express yourself on that because Zizi Kodwa touched on that. And he seems to be preparing the nation for the ANC submissions to the Zondo Commission, which, by the way, is on the 27th, I understand, of November. He's preparing us and saying that there are factions, there are individuals, so there cannot be collective responsibility. So even this loyalty is not that simple. There's a complexity here that I may be loyal to former President Jacob Zuma. I may be loyal to Cyril Ramaphosa, but that doesn't necessarily mean loyalty to the movement. We'll problematize that and talk about that in just a moment. Do stay with us.
We are in the fourth industrial revolution.
Things aren't the same anymore.
Technology is taking over much of what we do. That includes how we make payments.
Blockchain is the future.
On Network, we have robots, hackathons, and tech entrepreneurs.
Making sure that your business is well known across all borders. We use social media.
That's Network with me, Siphumelele Zondi, on Saturdays at 20:30 and Sundays at 17:30.
Our shops are being looted. Why they are attacking us? They set this club here on fire, and no firefighters came to fight them. If they want to fight drug dealers, they have ways to fight drug dealers. Not police. The police is police job.
It is about the drugs on our streets. This problem has been here for more than 20 years.
To be a part of something like this makes me proud, and I think that to be able to report the news in a fair, just, independent and impartial way is what the public broadcaster stands for.
Can the president, acting outside the cabinet, instruct you as the minister as to which board member you must appoint?
No.
Democratic Alliance and Mayor Patricia de Lille have come to a mutual agreement that in fact resolves the question of the leadership of the DA government in the city of Cape Town.
Welcome back. Tonight we discuss the very, very thin line between the state, the party, and even within the party, factions. So here's a scenario. Think about it. When a senior political official calls a minister on some project or appointment, does the official do so on behalf of the party or a particular faction within the party? Same with the DA, actually. Was de Lille's work as a mayor of Cape Town messed up by the DA or a particular dominant faction within the Democratic Alliance? I'm thinking also about MP Lindiwe Mazibuko, who has been vocal and articulate about why she left the Democratic Alliance, and she has spoken specifically about the powerful white men within the Democratic Alliance. So can we think of them as a faction as well? So whilst interference may be done by a senior party official, it may not be motivated by the party or initiated by party interests, but by a particular faction that has its own interests within the party. Is your head spinning? Well, mine is. Let's hear from our guests. And just a reminder, we've got Dr. Soma Figeni, Prince Mashele, and Dr. Stembile Mbede. Okay, so we were talking about factions. I think this is so important. It's very difficult for me to be empathetic when I analyze parties in my area of work. I'll start with you, Stembile. It's very difficult for me to just embrace what Zizi Kodwa says and say, you know what, it wasn't the party, it was the faction. And let's remember Gwede Mantashe, when allegations of state capture first surfaced. He said that this party and the state are not captured. It's just some individuals within the party. But, you know, the consequences, the ramifications have been so devastating. We don't have the luxury to just single out certain individuals and say, you were wrong. The fact that the party does not have the ability or the capability to deal with those individuals is problematic to me.
Well, I think that's something that we that we don't focus enough attention on is how important political parties are to the functioning of representative democracy. The kind of democracy that we have, which is that not every South African or eligible person can participate in decision making. So we elect people on our behalf to make those decisions on our behalf. And we elect those people through the vehicle of a political party. And so you need to have political parties that have a guiding logic or ideology or worldview that people vote into, that have internal processes that keep them operating properly, that have disciplinary processes, that have some kind of code of ethics. And what we've seen in South Africa is that the political parties themselves are not functioning optimally. And so the kinds of cracks that Prince was speaking about earlier, I think actually go beyond the individual figures of Mandela and Mbeki, but they point to what we've seen as the collapse of the center of the ANC, that under Nelson Mandela, under Thabo Mbeki, as much as that may have been an illusion, the ANC seemed to function as a single entity with a single line, and that was pushing towards some kind of single goal. That has seemed to collapse over the past few years, and that is why you are seeing then the kinds of effects of the internal political party issues on the state, and that's exactly what you saw in the DA.
Factionalism is inevitable then in a, what does the ANC call itself again, a broad church?
Here's the thing. Let our heads not spin.
My head is spinning.
This thing is not that complicated.
It's not complicated.
It's not complicated.
Tell me why.
It is. You see, our heads are spinning precisely because of spin doctors like Zizi Kodwa. They make us to chase our shadows. Here is the simple truth about it. The ANC as a ruling party deploys a president by the name of Jacob Zuma. They tell us this is going to be your president if you elect us. So we elected them. Then Jacob Zuma. When Jacob Zuma sings Umshini Wam, they expect us to clap. He's doing a good thing, so it's entertaining us. When he steals money, they want us to separate Jacob Zuma from the ANC. That's why our heads are spinning.
When Jacob Zuma does corrupt things, in other words, he facilitates state capture, the ANC facilitated state capture. So if you ask me, what is at stake now as there's a commission of inquiry? The ANC is at stake because these people who have facilitated state capture are ANC members. You can't disown them when they do bad things. You own them when they do good things. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing about it. The ANC is at stake. The people who are in government is deployed cadres. When they do bad things, we must look at the party.
Is that a fair critique, Somadoda? I'll tell you why I asked that. Because even in the build-up to Polokwane, there was the Zuma and the Mbeki camp, and I think there was the third way, or am I making things up? Yes. I think there was something called the third way. And then in the build-up to Nasrec, white monopoly capital, radical economic transformation versus Ramaphoria and cleaning up and so on. And I think I'm picking up on what Prince says, because a lot of people who have been sympathetic to the ANC, who are not particularly exasperated by what is happening in our country, will say to you, the ANC as a movement has certain values, certain founding standards and principles. You dare not judge it on the folly and the flaws of its current leadership. How do you feel about that?
ANC's original sin was drifting away from its own values and being alienated from itself. And people, when ANC was fragmented, were joining leaders, not the ANC.
Whoa,
and
we're joining
leaders? Leaders. You were a group of so-and-so. When a leader makes a mistake, you wait for the spin doctors, for the spokesperson to speak. Then you go and reinforce that. If the leader stabs somebody, you start saying, why did somebody run towards the knife? That's how things had become so bad. People surrendered themselves. It was like charismatic churches, cult movements. The values of the ANC are still there and waiting for people. But our politics, it doesn't end with the ANC only. We follow leaders like religious cult leaders. Mm-hmm. When they say bad things, we rush to defend them. So they cannot see anything, but the moment leaders were judged according to the values, it was easier because the values were closer to what could be national vision, national interest, and so forth. Power has been personalized. Mm-hmm. Institutions have been ravaged. And that is our fundamental problem. The point that Mbete was raising, there's been a collapse of internal democracy within parties, not only in the ANC. Now, some leaders rising to the top, some rise through thuggery. Your ability to eliminate your opponents.
KZN is a case in point, right? Mpumalanga.
Yes.
We don't talk
so
enough about
rising to the top is not necessarily because you had certain values. It's because it's the law of the jungle, elimination of the weaker, survival of the fittest. Yeah. Until we reflect on what has happened and what is spreading through other parties, the obsession with leaders.
Okay, so you both want to talk to this. Let's start with you, Prince Stembile. I'm coming to you just now.
One, this idea, which is again a product of spin doctoring, that we must separate human beings who are leaders and members of a party from the so-called values, which is the ink. It's ink.
Which is what?
Ink. It's values are written. If you the Freedom Charter is the ink. What is it? It's written. So we must separate.
The ANC ancestors are turning in their graves.
Right. So the values are beautiful. That's ink.
Platitudes.
Yeah. So when you vote for the values. Forget about the conduct of the human beings. It's fallacious. They are dribbling us while we watch. Here's the thing. There is no party without human beings. What is important, it's not values. It's the conduct of human beings, because we don't vote values. We vote the real human beings, flesh and blood, the chaps who go to
parliament. So the values mean nothing if the people who represent the party are subverting.
The conduct of human beings is based on values.
If they don't reflect the ink, the values mean nothing.
If they reflect, come in there. Ink. What do you say about it?
Look, whether you call it values or or ink. All organizations that are membership-based, that are driven, need to exist on the basis of some worldview, some binding view, whether you call it ideology, whether you call it values, philosophy. That is philosophy, that is what is, and then you name it something and then you try to attract people to join that. And I think what we're missing at the moment in all of South African politics is some sense of what is the worldview, what is the vision for the future.
Pushing back the frontiers of poverty.
Yes, that's going to be driving. And so the problems that you see within the Democratic Alliance, for example, are fundamentally about different visions of what South Africa should look like in the future, and fundamentally about different ideas about what is going to get the DA to be the party that takes South Africa into that
future.
We can do
Nelson Mandela.
Yes, it's personalized around particular individuals and for power, but it is still a different, that whatever it was that used to hold the party together about a common vision, about a common idea, doesn't exist anymore.
You're shaking your head. What's your problem?
Yeah, here's the thing about the DA, right? And it's precisely. If I were to ask Stembit, what were the ideological differences between Patricia de Lille and whoever was tormenting her? It would be hard to tell. Because Patricia de Lille, by the way, she has told us she believes in liberalism. That's why she joined the DA. The fellows who tormented her also believe in liberalism. They're also members of the DA. So you realize that you will not understand politics if you think that politics fundamentally is about ink. Politics is about what human beings do. So these chaps simply didn't like each other. So there's a clique that sat somewhere and said, you know what, we need to get rid of this person. Maybe she was not taking instructions, we don't know. So you must look at the conduct of leaders, not what is written. Because what is written is lifeless. What is full of life is what leaders do.
Okay, then the question is that how do you change the conduct of leaders without expecting them to go under some transformation to become Mother Teresa, who wasn't, or to become, what is it then that we look at to change the conduct of leaders in order to shift things in the way that we are? Because the picture that you're painting is then a very bleak one.
Okay, we're going to pick up on that and just come back to the center, because I actually don't care that these people like each other or not. I actually don't care. But when I know that Eskom is going to switch my lights off because the wrong faction got into power, when I know that I'm paying a little bit more for this and that service, when I know that the grannies and grandpa and people living with disabilities are not getting their grants because somebody who's politically powerful but is inept, doesn't have the gravitas, the skill to run a particular department, is not savvy when it comes to the technological requirements of the job, then I start caring. I actually don't care whether or not they like each other. But if cadre deployment means that the bottom of the rung, the most unsavory characters, have very important jobs, then I really, really care. Let's take a short break. We'll be back in a moment.
We at Network explore all things technological.
The modern battlefield is the battlefield of the mind, and the tools for affecting the mind are social media.
We look at how technology advances medicine and education.
Children can learn up to 60% more information in a shorter condensed amount of time using virtual reality as a medium for instruction.
From music, gaming, even computer-generated supermodels. Be a part of our network Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. and Sundays at 5:30 p.m.
We pride ourselves on being impartial as well as independent. On the agenda, we basically break down the stories of the day.
Give the viewer the assurance that we will cover every side of the story.
Tear gas has now been also thrown at the protesters.
We are peacefully marching and the police is stopping the people. They're hitting the people. We are spraying the people with pepper spray. These people are supposed to protect us, but they are against us.
We are pushing them back by using the rubber bullets because we cannot allow them to block the roads and damage other people's property.
quite important to bring on board all sides and hear what everybody has to say about the story, especially being the public broadcaster.
All in all, we basically take the news agenda of the day forward.
They were revered and they were honored.
We didn't harass our people. We revered our people.
But they have since fallen from grace.
Aung San Suu Kyi is blocking those investigations.
Should leaders be honored while still alive or posthumously? Watch African Perspective on Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News, Channel 404.
So, welcome back and thank you for joining us. This is Unfiltered. A reminder that today's show is an hour long. That's what we are doing. You can be a part of this conversation on Facebook and Twitter using hashtag SABC News Unfiltered. Our guests tonight are policy and political analysts, authors, Dr. Somadoda Figeni, Prince Mashele, and Dr. Stembile Mbete. What are we discussing? And this is a topic that you should care about. This is the thin line between the state, the party and factions. So I had a bit of a rant, Dr. Somadoda Figeni, that I don't care whether they like each other or not. I just want the state to be efficient. And I think that's what is exasperating about the situation, that you actually can have the people in power having the people that they want in strategic positions, but still having delivery. In my mind, cadre deployment and delivery need not be mutually exclusive. And that's what I'm trying to find out about the last couple of years of our democracy, from the Zuma years to now, whether you're looking at SARS, you're looking at ESCOM, Transnet, Denel, and so on. The professionals didn't disappear into thin air. You still had them, and you still had many that were loyal to the ANC. Is it that they refused to do wrong, that they were almost annihilated and the wrong people came into power? And again, when the wrong people are being suggested by ministers, for example, here's this institution. Yeah, I'm going to say it, the SABC. We had a minister, Faith Mutambi, who pushed for a particular CEO, and there was a public commentary and a statement attributed to her that Ubaba uyamthanda, you know, Ubaba loves him. And I'm talking about Mr. Hlaudi Motsoeneng. So at which point should the party then say, not in our name? The fact of the matter is that the party didn't. So what do we do with that?
I've always said one of the biggest problems with the ANC, even when it had 70% majority, it had 70% majority, but was operating at 5% courage. There was no courage. And also this notion of democratic centralism misunderstood. When you say it doesn't matter who doesn't like so-and-so and who is deployed as long as things function, we are here making a fundamentally wrong assumption.
Okay.
One's patronage network, which is having an underbelly of corruption, is in full force. This logic of a grand national interest disappears. The main thing is, are we eating enough? Are we servicing our patronage networks? Who will give us the quickest gains? If you have professional pride, of course you'll say, no, I can go elsewhere.
Yes.
But if you say, I'm so shocked that I've been appointed to this position, I never thought it would even appear in my obituary. All of a sudden I'm here. You'll say, I'll do anything. Now, the leaders of patronage look for the lowest common denominator.
Indeed.
Precisely because they know you say, my life depends on you. Should I not obey you, I'll never have access to this thing that only existed in my dreams.
Indeed.
So that's precisely the point. It starts eliminating professionals, and it becomes worse when you have almost 10 cabinet changes in 10 years.
Indeed.
Now, here's the thing. He is correct. I agree with him 150%.
At last you agree with someone.
No, I agree with him. Then the question is, your question, what do we do about it? You see, you can't tell me that the election of the idiot called Donald Trump has got nothing to do with the people who elected him. The idiocy of Donald Trump reflects the idiocy of Americans, right? So we had a Zuma here in South Africa. First term, he messes up, we can all see he's messing up. What do we do?
He can dance, he can sing, what's your
we
problem?
reward him with a second term, right, to loot more. Can you imagine what would have happened if South Africans second term, they said, no, the ANC, you are out, your Zuma looted, we are trying something else. Let me tell you what would have happened. The party that would have been elected would have been very careful.
That's idealistic.
Even the ANC would be forced to go back. I mean, that's how democracy functions in the West. I mean, remember this democracy thing we learned from the West. It started in Athens. So in the US, for example, if you mess up, the Democrats mess up, what happens? The
you
electorate
elect
change.
someone else and the same people repeat the same problems. It doesn't necessarily clean up the system.
Until we the electorate, change parties and punish them when they do wrong. Let me tell you, they will simply steal and...
I don't think in the United Kingdom, David Cameron made the mess up of the Brexit referendum, and Theresa May took over. They had another election, and they still re-elected the Tories, who, as we've seen in the last few days, are making...
You don't even have to go that far. Look at the midterm elections in the United States. The Democrats won the House just by a thin margin, and the fact that the Republicans returned to the Senate, I would have thought that the last 10 years there would be such a wide gap between the Republicans and the Democrats in favor of the Democrats.
Here we're failing to understand the fact that leaders can whip up emotions around certain things
and fear
that appear and fear and other things to keep their constituency. You say, if you remove me, this will go away. And they even create new enemies so that you get so scared.
But this is why you need to insulate. Getting back to our topic about the separation between party and state. This is why it's so important then to insulate the state, the administrative capacity of the state. But how do you do it?
Because the people who are deployed to the state are from the political.
And what you do, and this is the other thing, is that we forget that often the people that are deployed to the state are deployed at particular senior levels. It doesn't necessarily go all the way down. Secondly, what we forget is that there are rules, there are laws, there are regulations that are in place that are meant to govern that interface. And part of what we've seen in the Barbara Hogan's testimony that you were playing earlier is how those rules and laws and regulations were flouted
in favor
of. And so let's be careful when we're having these conversations that we don't have conversations about the breaking of law as the rule, and instead start thinking about how we can strengthen the laws and the regulations.
Hold that thought. Prince just wants to go
I know,
in
he
there.
just wants to get
Prince,
there.
you got to breathe. We have to take a short break. We have to, and I've got a surprise guest for you coming up next.
They say cricket is boring. Tata Joma, you and your friends, all of this sweep bowling, and all this music. Thank you, LKG.
Come on, Nana. We're in mood.
IP! They say cricket is boring. This is T20 cricket like we've never seen it before.
Fast, fun for all. The Mzansi Super League. Live on SABC 3 and SABC Radio.
This is a space for every woman in South Africa.
I want to speak to the women who cannot walk a kilometer in this country without looking over their shoulders, without being groped or harassed.
I was not born like this. In 2011, I got stabbed by a boyfriend.
How many centimeters? How many centimeters long is the political will to end the scourge of violence against women, against children.
I was locked up in the room for 2 weeks.
There are measures, there are laws, there are policies. But these policies and measures and laws do not speak to these lived realities.
We must fight the culture of gender-based violence.
This is where young men must be taught that women are not their footballs. This is where young men must be taught to respect women.
Can the president, acting outside the cabinet, instruct you as the minister as to which board member you must appoint?
No.
Democratic Alliance and Mayor Patricia de Lille have come to a mutual agreement that in fact resolves the question of the leadership of the DA government in the city of Cape Town.
Welcome back. You are watching Unfiltered with me, Ridi Tlabi. Be a part of this conversation on Facebook and Twitter using hashtag SABC News Unfiltered. So we are going to just pause with my guests, Dr. Somadoda Figeni, Dr. Stembile Mbete, and Prince Mashele. We're talking about the separation of state, party, and factions. And I think that the Western Cape is the perfect case study for our topic. I know that we are focused on the ANC precisely because the revelations at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture have driven home or affirmed this whole notion of the party just crossing the boundaries in the appointment of CEO for state-owned entities, for important positions in the civil service, the party having a preference and basically just pushing through the people that they want to push through. And the question that we're asking is, to what end? How does the party benefit from all of that? But I do have a guest for you, and she is the lady of the moment, the woman who has made news in the last couple of months, and particularly today, Patricia de Lille, a former member of the Democratic Alliance, former executive mayor of the city of Cape Town, former leader of the Independent Democrats, former leader of the Pan-Africanist Congress, and now she announced that she is going to be politically active in some sort of movement. Patricia, good evening to you. Are you not tired, for goodness sake?
Maybe the things that I believe in and have fought for my entire life remain my guide. My values remain steadfast. I really agree with your guest in what you are discussing tonight, that the politics as usual has failed too many South Africans, and our people have lost faith in politics and politicians. And God forbid they should lose faith in our democracy, because the people in politics have not lived up to the privilege and responsibility to serve. I am not tired. I love this country. I'm a patriot. I will continue to fight to make sure that many people that have died and have fought for in the struggle against apartheid, that we continue to live up to and deliver on those aims and objectives of the struggle.
Hold on, Patricia.
People will accuse me that, you've been in this party and that party and that party, but I will use any vehicle, because that is my democratic right enshrined in the Constitution, to continue to fight until one day we can get a good country with good people, because if good people do nothing, that is when evil is triumphing in our country as it is now.
But hold on, Patricia. I mean, you know that you're anticipating, you're preempting that people will say you've been to this party and that party. I don't think that's insignificant. I don't think that's relevant, because it does demonstrate something about you, that you have not been able to achieve these ideals that you've so eloquently articulated on the vehicles that you've described, whether it's the ID, the PAC and the DA, and you'll just go to where the wind blows.
No, there's no wind blowing. The wind blowing in our country is a win that we must all put in all our effort to save our country. That is the responsibility of each and every one of us. And if I, as an individual, decide that I believe that there are many good people in this country to want to see that our good country succeed, I'm also in.
Okay, Patricia, are you still there? Patricia, are you still there? Have we lost Patricia? Okay, we'll try and get Patricia back. Patricia, are you still there? No. My next question to Patricia would have been, so if you are driven by all these ideals, then you should have left the Democratic Alliance much sooner, not when they tried to turn against you. And that is why I'm questioning the values that are driving her. Is it being self-preservation or really being driven by values? What do you make of all of this? How is this different from anything else that she's done before?
Well, I do think that self-preservation is a very practical thing that we can come up with. And it then comes with the justification, because he was not going to just walk into a sunset. When things fall apart, that's when people start thinking of alternatives. It happened with Lindwe Mazibuko. She had to take a sabbatical
and then come
back and come do something, because once you reach a certain level as a leader, going into a sunset just like that is not easy. There were several options of joining another party, of joining or starting a party, or going to the NGOs or social movement. But at times, it often is preferred that people prefer to be a head of a chicken rather than a tail of an elephant.
We've got Patricia back. I mean, Patricia, that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you, that you talking about all these values and standing for right, and when good people do nothing, etc., etc. But isn't it true that you constantly reach this moment in your political life when you are being pushed out? I mean, at which point did the DA stop being that vehicle through which you can achieve these ideals that you are explaining for us? I mean, how do we trust your authenticity and your sincerity when you are saying all these things, but you are saying them precisely because you or the DA had lost favor in you or you in them? I mean, what's driving you, really?
Well, you know what's driving me is my love for my country. I'm a patriot. I want to see my country succeed. And I don't really care what anybody says about me. It is what I feel. It is my commitment. It is my love for my country that will decide what I do tomorrow when I open up my eyes. It is not about the position. Really, I've been fighting since I was a very, very young age. But I've always fought for a cause. It was never about personal gain. I've been offered positions in Parliament as ministers. I've turned it down because I don't need that. I don't need money from anybody. I can easily go off in the sunset and go and retire and most probably become a political analyst. Because everybody just wake up one morning and say, I'm a political analyst. But I am prepared to work and to work damn hard to save my country until you put me 6'6" under the ground.
Okay.
But before that, I will not stop.
We're running out of time, Patricia. What do you hope to achieve very quickly? And secondly, what do you think about how your former party leader, Mmusi Maimane, dealt with your issues?
Well, Mmusi Maimane certainly didn't show that he's a leader of note. He has failed to protect me, to ensure that the party used the party constitution to protect my rights or even the country constitution. So he's failed hopelessly because he's been influenced by a cabal around him. As a leader, you must be able to be part of a solution, not part of a problem. And any party, if you don't have systems and due processes in place that is applicable to all your members, that party is due to fail. But I'm moving on now. The DA is history, and I'm going to campaign the length and the breadth of this country, not for myself for personal gain, but to save my country and to build a good South Africa.
Good luck, Patricia. Good luck. Godspeed to you. Thank you very much for joining us on Unfiltered. Thanks indeed. We take a quick break. Stay with us.
pride ourselves on being impartial as well as independent. On the agenda, we basically break down the stories of the day.
Give the viewer the assurance that we will cover every side of the story.
Tear gas has now been also thrown at the protesters.
We are peacefully marching and the police is stopping the people. They're hitting the people. We are spraying the people with pepper spray. These people are supposed to protect us, but they are against us.
We are pushing them back by using the rubber bullets because we cannot allow them to block the roads and damage other people's property.
Quite important to bring on board all sides and hear what everybody has to say about the story, especially being the public broadcaster.
All in all, we basically take the news agenda of the day forward.
SABC is independent and impartial, and it's important that as we deliver the news, we do so without fear, without favour, without prejudice, and that we ensure that we get the multiplicity of views so that our stories and coverage is balanced.
We pride ourselves on being impartial as well as independent. On the agenda, we basically break down the stories of the day, give it more substance and give it more detail. So all in all, we basically take the news agenda of the day forward.
But more than that, we'll be able to reflect the stories of ordinary folk, people who are trying to make ends meet, facing the most incredibly difficult obstacles and circumstances, and that they will find that their realities are expressed on the SABC.
To be a part of something like this makes me proud, and I think that to be able to report the news in a fair, just, independent and impartial way is what the public broadcaster stands for.
Okay, welcome back. This is the very last segment of the show. We've got so much to discuss. We continue with our guests, Somadoda Figeni, Prince Mashele, and Sembile Mbete. Prince, very quickly, you are not trusting of Patricia de Lille, and in as far as her experience in the Western Cape, or rather in the city of Cape Town, speaks to our topic today, the state versus party. Let's just use the water crisis in the Western Cape. I mean, Mmusi Maimane basically went in there and interfered. The ANC wanted to lay charges against him. So it sounds as if it's just impossible for parties to just stay in their lane.
Yeah, but you see, my opinion is not popular with my colleagues here. My opinion is simple, and it's a consequence theory. In a part, when your deployed officials in government do wrong, what do? You punish them. That's consequence.
Yeah.
When the party doesn't do that, there is a layer of punishment. That is voters. Vote the party out of power. Simple. There is simply no other way. If you think there's some other way, you are imagining the impossible.
Yeah, but I understand that people may think there isn't another way, because I've just spoken to the former mayor of Cape Town and she feels that the DA overreached. ANC, we can use all sorts of examples. I'm thinking UDM, Nelson Mandela Bay. And
so vote the DA out in the Western Cape if they have crossed the line.
And replace them with people whom you think are doing the same thing.
Can I make a point about Patricia?
Yeah.
Without dramatizing.
Oh, I don't think you're capable of not dramatizing.
Here's the thing. She has sold us, ice in winter, this thing about love their country and all that story.
You are such a cynic. There are people who really love their country.
I love my country too.
Are you sure?
So here's the thing. Think of it. The thing called retirement is very traumatic. I mean, here is Patricia de Lille, who used to be part of the political elite, walking around in this council and parliament, and suddenly she wakes up in the morning, she has nothing to do. She would actually have a difficult life. So what does she do? She forms a party, because that party is the very same thing that can facilitate her re-entry into that elite club, number one. Number two, a salary. These politicians are paid very well, by the way. If this person goes on retirement, she will have to downgrade her living standards.
I think it's so hard to start a political party with no...
Yeah. So if you can find a way of getting back to parliament in order for you to sustain a salary, you do it. Okay. There is no love for a country. This person is trying to survive, and it's normal.
The problem here, when we say voters should punish this and that, we are assuming that voters are spoiling for choice. What if we have a landscape which has become a choiceless choice. Hence, many people just decide to stay home. And the majority that wins is a majority of a minority that voted.
Yeah.
Because
people are
you
disillusioned.
find that they have reservations with this party, they have reservation with that party, with that party, with that
A
party.
bit like banks, we all hate them.
So
equally.
that we should keep in mind that weakness of the ANC is not equal to strength of the opposition.
Of the alternative. Sembile?
And this is where I think that there are two areas where we need to look at for solutions to this. The first is that, and the National Development Plan, and I know Prince is very cynical about it, we all are, but Chapter 13 has actually really useful ways of insulating the administration from the political. And the thing is that politicians, as we've heard from Auntie Pat, politicians are political animals. If they can move around, join another movement, they'll do it, start another one. That's what they do. And so we need to have a way where the running of our state is not reliant on the whims of politicians.
But I don't know how we're going to achieve it.
And so we need to think very carefully about how we are going to achieve it. And the second thing then is that for the actual political parties need to start taking very seriously their own health and their own institutionalization. Because the fact is, as Dr. Figeni has said, the second highest number of votes after the ANC in the last 3 elections have gone to people who haven't voted. So people are choosing to stay away rather than participate, and political parties need to take that seriously.
I haven't dealt with this, and I could kick myself for doing this, but just going back to the state capture and so on, and why it's been difficult to hold individuals to account, is that sometimes some money has gone to the party itself.
Yes.
And so that's why it's difficult to punish the individual who made the decision, because the party has benefited. I'll use SARS as an example. At the time that Jacob Zuma was in trouble with his taxes, and Ivan Pillay and the leaders there at that time were trying to get him to be tax compliant, the reason the ANC backed him was because the party itself was not tax compliant. So very quickly about the party and the individuals, and the wrongdoing just stretches across, and then there's no accountability, as you spoke to.
If Patricia de Lille is corrupt as mayor of the DA, we must not separate Patricia de Lille from the DA. If we make that mistake...
But if the DA takes action, or the ANC takes action against the person, then you can separate.
Yeah. You can, but if the ANC doesn't take action, what do? Punish the ANC. That's my point. There is no solution. You can go wherever. She says we must think very carefully about how we're going to do it. But what does that mean? I am saying punish the party.
For me, I think that we've become too obsessed with this thing called leader and this thing called political party. Social movements whose aim is not to get into parliament or power, whose aim is to transform a society in a particular manner.
In fact, in Mpumalanga, there are social movements who've won the elections and are running municipalities.
That in itself can hold many people, can change our orientation, because party system, as it stands now, across the board has become corrupted. Even the internal democracies are not functioning as they should.
Final thoughts.
And that issue of the money and political parties, money and politics is fundamental. We've got a bill that's supposed to be signed on political party funding.
It's been going on for a long time, and that's where political parties all agree to keep the secret.
And so this issue of where then political parties, politicians allow themselves to be corrupted by capital interests then is one of the big things. And the big thing also is about political culture. That what do we as a society allow? What is the culture that we allow to fester and to grow?
Last thought.
Punish political parties.
Please.
Remove them from power when they are corrupt. Keep on changing them. That's the best mechanism.
We'll leave it there. That's all we had for you this evening. Until we meet again next Sunday, a big thank you to my guests. Thank you so very much. Good night, South Africa. I'll see you next week on Unfiltered.